right, welcome back everyone. We are here at Automate Live, and I have a very special guest today. My name is Jake Hall, the Manufacturing Millennial, and we are being introduced to the keynote speaker of this morning, Del Costy, the president of Siemens Digital Industries for Americas. Del, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome. You know, you are a lifelonger at Siemens, 23 years at the same company. Went to college in Michigan State University. Got to be specific. Yep. Have a culture of in Detroit. You know, you shared some amazing takeaways from the keynote this morning that I want to dive into, but I can see how your passion matches your job and how those two collide. So Siemens is doing a lot of things in the industry right now.
Correct.
They're all over the place. I don't think a lot of times people realize how big Siemens is as a company.
Even people in Siemens.
Yeah, even people in Siemens and all the different industries that you guys touch. But when we look at how the industry is changing, we know it's changing because there's 40,000 people here at Automate this week that are learning about new technologies and new trends. So the first question for you is, I want to talk about how Siemens is addressing change. And when we look at all the processes that have existed in manufacturing for years, technology, I would say, is the biggest disruptor of those trends and those practices. So how is Siemens going about making sure that we're leveraging the potential of the technology that exists?
That's a great question. So I really enjoyed the time today, by the way.
Yeah.
I really love leaning into the topic because it's kind of in my blood. It's just, I grew up with it, right? We've had innovation every year of every decade.
Yeah.
It's just different now. And so it's the rate that the innovation can take root. But what I talked about today is it's imperative that one of our mantras is technology with a purpose.
Yes.
And so we can leverage through our partner ecosystem the best technology in the world. We develop some pretty amazing technology, but it needs to be put in the context of consumption. Mm-hmm. You know, if you look at companies now, it's all about the idea of adoption. We can't discount that because adoption simply means that we frame technology in a way that it's going to benefit a process, and it was designed in a way that the people that need to consume the technology are actually consuming it.
Yes,
that's the definition of adoption, right? So if we're doing that properly, that means the value is being delivered, and we've got a mechanism to iterate on. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it's never about the tech. And the tech's so important, but what is more important is the progression that a company can make. And I say this every chance I get. Transformation is big, mm-hmm. and there's multiple ways to look at it. We got to question ourselves: are we happy with incremental gain? Because if we want to look for transformational gain, we always have to keep an eye on the end-to-end. What is a real art of the possible? Mm-hmm. And to me, success is a combination of both.
For sure. And when I look at transformation, I mean that's kind of the story of Siemens over the last decade. I remember during your keynote, you talked about Siemens, and then you had another graph of all the Siemens acquisitions, going into the digital world. And so when you look at manufacturing is changing so rapidly, and I think Siemens' strategy was, in order for you guys to change at the pace that the industry needs to change, you went through and you guys really strategized on creating and partnering with great companies out there to bring on board. So when we look at bringing new technology on board to manufacturers, especially in brownfield facilities, how are we ensuring that the production isn't lost, the culture isn't lost? All the different types of older facilities that have running operations, when we're implementing new technology, what are the best practices to make sure that that by leveraging digital transformation isn't becoming a hindrance to existing processes at facilities?
Yeah, and I think you noticed at the end of the keynote, I played a video of the industrial metaverse, and I could have picked a facility that was a customer. I didn't. I picked one of our facilities because Siemens isn't only a student and a provider of this technology, they're a consumer of the technology. Mm-hmm. And the video that I played was an actual brownfield facility of Siemens.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to note, Jake, most companies aren't starting at zero and have to figure out how to get to 60 miles per hour. Mm-hmm. Most companies have a digital footprint today.
Yeah.
So one, it's an understanding of the maturity of the processes that exist, and then looking for those opportunities to say, we've mapped out the maturity, here's some areas that are great starting points. More importantly, here's I describe them because of lean manufacturing days in my 20s, but here are some bottlenecks that you have in terms of technology adoption. And if we implement technology in this spot, here's the benefit it's going to have. Now, once we do that, we can look right and look left. And we talk about digital thread, and digital thread is based on that customer process, which is agnostic to brownfield or greenfield. It's just a solid process. Companies always go through process mapping to determine how they can get more efficient. Now you do that with a data construct and a system construct, and you say, here are the gaps in my performance. This is a great place to shore up. When we get into that type of iterative discussion with our customers, it becomes obvious where to focus. And so we pick those areas. And I gave an example today.
With BorgWarner, right?
Yeah, that was tied to sustainability. And what an exciting project. And now Borg has orchestrated it where it's a collection of companies, because they're not going to rip and replace everything that they have. We need to work together to give BorgWarner the outcome that they deserve. Which is having very real-time access to what they're doing from energy consumption, carbon footprint, so that the commitments that they made can be delivered against. It's awesome.
And the one thing, so at a previous life, BorgWarner was a customer of mine, and I walk into a Michigan facility, and it's completely different than a facility down in South Carolina. I mean, they're one of the 25th, one of the top 25 largest, automotive manufacturers that are out there, and it's so hard to create consistency and a plan across an enterprise that has dozens, if not hundreds of facilities. So when we look at the strategy on how Siemens is creating a roadmap for a lot of these companies, I think there's a lot of different topics that come into play. And you mentioned briefly on it earlier on sustainability. And I think sustainability is one thing it's pushed heavily across the world, and I think America is really, in a lot of cases, in a lot of companies, really stepping up to bat when it comes to not only environmental sustainability, but sustainability within culture of the company, sustainability within the manufacturing processes. Can you talk more about what Siemens' vision is when it comes to transforming those manufacturing companies forward?
Gladly, but before I do that, I want to allude to something you talked about. You talked about going and seeing plants and different processes everywhere. But when we think about this idea of digital thread, we talk about a model-based enterprise. So I design a product and I represent that product. Then I design a process digitally before I actually make any or release any hard tooling or do anything at a plant. And then I extend that and I figure out how to move that model through. And now I know what I need to build and how I'm going to build it. I know what supply chain impact I'm going to have, and now I can plan all that out and I can execute against it. But the fact is, there is capability that's technology driven, and that's why I love, and that's why I show the series of acquisitions, because it's important. One of the elements in there is this idea of an enterprise bill of process, so that I can have my foundational definition of how I'm going to build a product, and its core, so wherever I build it, but there may be some differences. If I'm going to build it in country A versus country B, country A may have more automation, country B may have less. There may be some nuances, but I can manage that all centrally so I understand what that core definition is. Think of the power of that of building off digital thread. Now, if I transition that to sustainability, catching up on sustainability is not easy. If I start with sustainability on mine in a program, and we talk about, and there's studies out there that show 80% of my sustainability footprint is done in the concept phase of the product design. The fact that we've got end-to-end digital enterprise capability means we understand what's happening in defining a set of requirements for how I'm going to design and execute and build a product. So we start off with that in mind. We can work on efficiency areas to drive a more sustainable product and process with the correct materials, the correct lightweighting, whatever the concept is going to be of how I need to do that. Then we take that all the way through manufacturing and look at how I can lean up. As technologies continue to advance, like additive, we talk about an example, just the end effector on a robot. Some of them can be pretty heavy, but if I start leveraging the technology, I can redesign those things and I can design the optimum model using the software, using generative capability. And by the way, that model can be 50, 60, 70% lighter. If I multiply that out and I have that type of weight reduction on an end effector and I multiply that by the number of robots, I can actually downsize the robot. I don't need the same energy consumption. How many of those opportunities do I have? If I modify design and I look at dunnage, I look at container, I look at the container ecosystem and how that flows, How do I reshare? I mean, there's so many areas we can dive into with a digital footprint that you can't do without it in terms of the time and speed.
I remember watching a video in your partnership that you guys had with NVIDIA when it comes to the metaverse, right?
Yeah.
That they're pushing
Industrial
out there,
metaverse,
the
yeah.
industrial metaverse. And they gave examples of if I'm able to simulate this process and run this process, I can make real-time changes that can happen instantly and give way better access to problems that could happen down the road and planning ahead for them. It's really an incredible opportunity
I'm
to see.
so pumped about this. Where I would go with that is, I talked today about this idea of a digital twin.
Yeah.
And I do emphasize between digital twin and digital twins. Our CEO on the software side does as well. I mean, he talks about it all the time. And he's driven an acquisition strategy that allows us to talk about a digital twin singular because we have the multifunction, multi-physics represented in the digital twin.
Yeah.
We have the process definition. We know how the plant's going to operate. So for us, it's a holistic digital twin. The power of that is significant.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the things we're talking about in the industrial metaverse come from that. Now, couple that with the strength that we have in automation, 1 out of 3 PLCs is Siemens, right?
Yeah.
So we have a large global footprint.
Absolutely.
If you think of what some would call that the brains of the shop floor, right? If you think of harmonizing these things, and now you couple it with the edge, and I've got this high-fidelity digital twin, I've got this full physics-based industrial metaverse, I could see simultaneously what's happening on the floor, and then is it live or is it Memorex? I can stop,
Yeah.
I can rewind, I can see what was a contributing factor to some failure mode or point, I could fast forward and I could predict if I have potential supply chain disruptions, what and why. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's super powerful capability that will be at the users and companies' fingertips.
Yeah. So one final question, we talk about capability that's going to be happening in the future. AI.
Yeah.
AI is a term that has become trending across every topic in our daily lives. AI is going to change the way we work. AI is going to change the way we live.
I saw Terminator.
Yeah. What's Siemens' strategy when it comes to leveraging AI to make people's lives easier and make the technology that we use easier?
Yeah, we talk about technology with a purpose, and I showed an example today with the Siemens Industrial Copilot, which is a great partnership with Microsoft, and the power of that I think excited a lot of people in the crowd. So for those that didn't see it, played an AI that shows how I can interact with programming a machine.
Yeah.
And this is the Siemens Industrial Copilot for engineering, so I can do this remote from the plant, but I can interact and I can really drive the development of new code, and it's completely interactive with generative AI.
Yeah.
And so super powerful example. I can do it on the operation floor as well. And then we embed ML AI with our partnership with AWS in our low code platform. Again, leveraging the power of it in everything I do. So huge potential in what's going to continue to grow there.
Awesome. Well, Del, I really appreciate your time. Del Costy, President of Siemens Digital Industries for Americas. How do we learn more about what Siemens is doing?
Oh, hit the Siemens website. We got a ton of people. And if you're here at Automate, I got a very eager staff ready to talk all this tech and go through our digital thread mapping with you.
Absolutely. Awesome. Del, thank you so much for your time. Of course, if you want to learn more about what Siemens is doing, check them out online. Check them out at all the events they're at across the world, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks.